Good to go. Here we are. I think we're going. Is this the right place to stand? Yes, great, fab. Hi, folks. Very nice to see you all here. My name's Tim Yates. I run the research program at Drake Music. I am a white 40-something guy with a long beard and long curly hair, green jumper, blue jeans, blue shoes. And this is DMLab. So these are our sessions at Drake Music, talking about accessible music tech, practice, instruments, instrument development, anything to do with accessible music tech. A few things before we get going. We are online, broadcasting online as well as in person. So if you're online and watching online, please do add comments to the chat if there's anything you want to contribute or ask questions of any of the presenters. Deborah will be there to field those questions and make sure they get into the room. Fire exits for the building are over there, as are the accessible loos out through that door. Yeah, that's most of the admin. There we go. So the format of the evening is we have 3 presentations over the course of the evening. We have the first 2, then a 15-minute break followed by a third. And the first presentation we have this evening is an online presentation. Matt Dalgleish, who is a researcher, educator, artist designer, congenitally one-handed musician who works at the intersection of people, music, and audiovisual tech and accessibility. He is going to be talking about modular synthesizers and disabled temporalities, and I'm hoping that he's going to appear on the screen behind. He is there. Matt, can you hear me?
I can.
Yes.
I can hear you well.
Fabulous, and we can hear and see you as well, so I think you're good to go. Brilliant. Off you go, Matt. Brilliant. Round of applause for Matt, please.
Hi everyone, sorry I can't be with you tonight. A combination of it being welcome week for my university and a bit of illness means that I'm sadly in the Midlands rather than some more glamorous location. I'm a white, bearded, 40-year-old male. Try not to hold that description that sounds a bit like a Crime Watch type thing against me. And I'm just going to share my slides. And share them with you. And then we'll get going. Okay. Hi, so hopefully you can see my screen pretty well. So I'm primarily a designer, or have been primarily a designer of instruments for other people, with and for other people for about 15 years now. And as Tim mentioned, I'm also a congenitally one-handed musician. Those things were kind of separate from my synthesizer use for quite a while, but the two things have increasingly merged over the last couple of years. I previously used the synthesizer more as a teaching tool, but it's become more and more kind of my main instrument, since maybe 2022, something like that. In my day job, I teach a lot of game audio, and before that, I used to run the audio technology program at the University of Wolverhampton for about 10 years. But I first started using a modular synth way back during my master's degree. I had a background in fine art sculpture before that. But during my master's degree, I literally bumped into the composer Rolf Gallagher. He sort of agreed to teach me audio programming and composition, and I got one-to-one teaching for about a year during my master's, which was great. And as part of that, I went to some workshops with Mark Coniglio, who founded Troika Ranch, but also used to work with Morton Subotnick, and another workshop at Vivid with Woody and Steiner Vasulka, and they really kind of developed this interest in modular synthesizers, which was kind of separate from my main practice or lurked in the background for about 10 years or so. So the way that the modular synth came into and intersected with my main research interest was that I've been designing instruments as part of the new interfaces for musical expression scene, the 9 scene. And NIME, over 20 years, the community has produced many, many instruments, interfaces, controllers, but few have been very widely adopted. And it got me thinking that perhaps there are no universal solutions. Disabilities and individual experience of disability being so diverse. But what if a promising option had gone relatively unnoticed? And what if that option was somehow kind of innately disability friendly? And it's that thought that got me thinking about the modular synth in a new light. So, as I'm sure you're aware, one of the key features of modular synthesizers is that they're near endlessly repatchable. You can patch near infinite combinations of modules for signal generation, processing, etc., etc. But for me, the important thing was that the modular synth can operate across the full spectrum of musical timescales that's been proposed by Curtis Rhodes. So from the level of the near infinitely small up through the level of the individual sample, all the way up to durations which are minutes, hours, days, potentially even longer still. And I started to think there's kind of something in there directly related to accessibility. So that was really the starting point for this talk and thinking through some of those things. So for me, the appeal of the modular synth as a one-handed player was that rather than always demand note by note input, where I'm constantly having to manually kind of activate each note, the modular synth shifts attention between listening, reacting, composing or programming a thing, and the player itself. And it also encourages more open-ended musical forms. It's perhaps not a great platform for making songs on, in that sense of very definite closed forms. That's certainly possible. It's more well suited to things like generative processes, randomness, feedback patches. I had the idea that these things collectively sort of reshape not only interaction demands, but also a sense of time. That in both a player and a listener, the modular synth has some kind of effect on time. And within the near endless possibilities of modular synthesizers, I'm going to suggest there are three broad pillars of modular time. Those being iteration and loops, generativity, and indeterminacy. Without wanting to give anyone who's done an undergrad class in philosophy flashbacks or nightmares, these three pillars of modular time resonate with various philosophical notions of subjective time, particularly Deleuze's idea of time as multiplicity and difference in repetition, Bergson's notion of time as an indivisible qualitative flux, and Husserl's notion of the present as a continuously extended, what he calls specious now, where there are elements of memory, or what he calls retention, and anticipation, or what he calls protension, all wrapped up together and inseparable. So to give you an example of how that might look in terms of an actual patch, I'd argue that the Malaco wired noise ring, one of the original Grant Richter designed Malaco modules, is almost a sort of specious now in a module. It gives us the potential for loops with slight variations almost indefinitely, and it actively displays change in its user interface rather than the sequence itself. So it only indicates to us what's changing. So in this example, we've got a looping sound that's continually retained, but sort of reformed and altered on each repetition. So we've got this mixture of the past and the present, or the present future. So past keeps coming back with slight variation each time. And then in terms of how Bergson's idea of time as an indivisible quantitative flux, the idea de Jure might look something like a continuous smooth flow or flows of control voltage, subtly morphing textural or timbral parameters without discrete steps. So this is a little Tub Barton patch where we've got two sine waves through a ring mod into the surge variable slope filter, and also a cycling envelope into the second audio input of the filter, and then maths modulating the cutoff frequency of that filter. And we get these kind of gradual timbral changes.
Sorry.
Without harsh jumps, without discernible steps. And these variations can be going on for some time, if not essentially infinite. And the last one from this section, Deleuze's idea of time as multiplicity, indifference, and repetition. We might have something like a fairly standard cyclical sequence, which is always producing new variations. So this patch by Under the Big Tree is quite a nice example of that. Starts very, very simply, just cycling round, clocked by one LFO. A second LFO is then added at a different rate, and it causes the pulses of the sequence to kind of jump around. So it feels sometimes like an echo, then like a longer trail, and then sometimes like it's going in reverse, all without losing the basic cyclical function of the patch.
So, just for fun, I'm going to take another LFO pulse output, which is operating at a different rate, and I'm going to put it into the step left control. And now the two pulses are fighting against each other to create something completely different. And as I change the rate of that second LFO,
okay, so we've put these three ideas, three pillars of modular time, in some kind of philosophical context of subjective time, but these same temporal logics also resonate with the temporal experiences of disabled people, as articulated by disability studies in recent years. And these experiences often differ from capitalist or ableist norms, where speed, productivity, linear progress are all linked. And instead, disabled time, or what Kafer calls crip time, often means unpredictability, non-productive temporality, or non-linear temporality. And these things seem to resonate quite well with those ideas, those patches we've just seen. I think it's important to emphasize that crip time, which Kafer has become quite well known for theorizing, isn't just about slowness. It's also about responding to unpredictability, particularly being about resistance to normative time, perhaps capitalist time, and its uses. So it's more than just doing things more slowly. That's quite important. But if the modular synthesizer affords a kind of disabled embodiment, affords the accommodation of disabled time, what might a musical crip time involve or look like? I think it's notable when you're just starting out. There's no patch book that makes any kind of suggestions of things that you might want to try. So I'm just going to suggest three kind of starter patches really as examples, and they've got diagrams for patching them up if you want to try that. And they can be expanded in all sorts of directions, so you can definitely take them further. But the first of these is the idea of the loop as being something without end, something without the pressure of progress, becomes something you can kind of dwell inside. And it favors presence, maintenance, and unpredictability over completion and productivity. And if we kind of put that into practical sense, so this is just a patch on my system, and it's a patch that's looping, but it's looping in such a way that it's quite hard to pick up the repetition. So it's a balance between unfamiliar and familiar. It does eventually loop, but it takes quite a long time. It's using 3 LFO-like sources at different rates, summing them, using a comparator to produce gates off those, and also using the same process to step through a random generator, which is choosing the pitch for the VCO. Finally, we've got a delay line, which is also being modulated by the same envelope. Hopefully that's going to play. So, for some reason, we've got sound but not visual. I'm not sure why. I'll not have to worry about that for a moment. But just to give you an idea of the patch, the looping is coming from the left-hand side. It's turned into looping random gates by this combination of mixing and the comparator here. And then the AD envelopes are being fired off the OR and XOR outputs of the comparator. It's a little bit like a mini crow patch, just on a slightly smaller scale. Another idea that we might take forward as being embodying disabled time is really David Tudor derived. Tudor produced some of the first DIY live electronics. He put them together in combinations which made the output unpredictable and unstable. And although he was a virtuosic pianist, he wanted systems that you couldn't impose control on. And so, in this sense, a modular patch can also be about coexisting in contingency. Rather than imposing control, you listen and adapt to the output. The musical output reflects the interaction with the patch, not the execution of it. So this is a really simple example of a chaotic system. For time, I'm just going to move on to the next one, which is a bit more of a favourite of the same thing. But the previous patch uses just 2 modules. This uses to create a chaotic system. This uses a couple more to implement a chaotic patch based on Rob Hordic's Rungler. And left to run, this will lurch unpredictably between states, which is one of the telling characteristics of a chaotic patch. Also, if you make minor adjustments, it tends to have a big effect on the final result. It's really sensitive. So little tweaks, output of an oscillator goes into the data input of an analog shift register. That's clocked by an LFO, and there's feedback from the analog shift register into the VCO and into the frequency input of the LFO if you wish. You can make this thing really precariously balanced, but it will effectively run itself. Producing these variations, and then it will kind of bifurcate and jump to the next state. A little tweaks. Making things different. that really noisy kind of gritty output, you can always use the patch to drive, almost like as a sequencer to drive something else. You can even make it quite melodic if you wish. But that's a particular favorite because it's so varied and sensitive and uses only 4 modules. And you consider feedback loop, which is the really important bit between the shift register and the VCO. So I've added, just as an example, to try if you wish, Dopfer's quite well-known implementation of a logistic equation, so another kind of chaotic equation you can patch with simple modules, an LFO, a couple of VCAs, and multiples are at the heart of that one. But the third thing I think that's particularly useful to explore in terms of the modular and disabled time are the ways in which modular systems allow time to be reconfigured across that physical surface. And for me, that's maybe the main reason to use the modular rather than modular like programming language, pure data or Max. That this thing allows you to spread out time across a physical, tangible surface that you can grasp and feel. And we've got ideas of slow embodied interaction, like slowly turning a knob, but also the idea of delegated time, where I might have a complex task and I might let a sequencer run, and that's performing pitch shifts for me, and then I control maybe a transposition process at the end of that. So the interaction isn't overwhelming me. It's offsetting some of the interaction in time, so it becomes manageable. And quite closely related, we've got the idea of distributed agency. So instead of distributing in time, perhaps distributing between different people, different users across the surface, or between partially automated elements or random elements, whilst giving some control to me as the player at the same time, and having complete flexibility to mix and match these things. In terms of delegated time, the idea of letting the modules do at least some of the work, and it giving you time to listen and maybe to rest if that's needed as well, while you take in what's happening and decide. It's not forcing you note by note to keep up physically with the system. It's a different pace to playing something like the guitar, perhaps. Okay, so with that, I'll just wrap up with the idea that through their support for open-ended music, whether that be looping, generative patterns, self-sustaining feedback patches, or other forms of unpredictability like chaos, modular synthesizers align well with disability studies' critique of normative time. Modular synths don't just accommodate disabled practices, but they actively generate and enable the manipulation of new forms of time that refuse to conform to productivity, speed, linearity. I laugh when I mention productivity in modular synths, such as the sort of time sink factor. The modular synth is not only a philosophical instrument of time, it's also a disability affirming tool that can help composer players live time differently. There's a sense of being inside something that's immersive and engaging, at least for me, in a way that other instruments haven't necessarily been. And last but not least, I've suggested some starting points that might be of use, exploring some of these things and could be taken further. So there's a bit of a bibliography there, but if you'd like to know any more or have any questions after the talk, my email address is there, and hopefully you might have a copy of the slides in the chat as well. I'll stop sharing. And if anyone's got any questions, I think we've got 5 minutes for questions.
Mike, there we go. Yes, Matt, so there's just been a question. Can we please see the bibliography again, people? I think if you can
of course.
On stage, up on the screen, that would be great.
Yeah, 1 second.
There we go. Brilliant. We'll leave it. If you can leave it up there for a few seconds, I guess we could take. Everyone's taking photos.
Yeah, it's no problem.
I'll let you know when it's. I'll let you know when it's done.
The bottom reference, Alex White's PhD. I was lucky enough to be the examiner for it, and I can recommend his modular synth master's thesis. That's about maybe 7 or 8 years before that as well. Both are a really interesting read from someone who has a really good grip on modular synth practices. The other texts are a little bit more general. A mix of disability studies and electronic music but yeah, the Alex White one at the bottom is specifically on modular synths and their contemporary impact.
Fabulous. I think everybody? Yes, I think everybody's got their photos now, so that's all good.
Cool.
Are there any further questions in the room or online? We don't have anything on it. Any questions in the room? Yes. Let me just pass the mic over to Paulee.
It's not a question. I just wanted to say thank you very much, and especially thank you for the phrase musical crip time. I will use that all the time now. It's incredible, and thanks for explaining how modular, allows the musician to, I guess, delve in and out, and react.
Yeah, that's a really nice way of putting it.
Brill, but thanks.
Thank you.
Fabulous. Any other questions in the room? I'm not seeing it. Let me just check if there are any online. I don't think so. So, actually, I have a question, Matt, really about modular synthesizers. Sometimes can seem super intimidating and complex and things. What do you recommend as a good starting point for someone, especially with kind of accessibility in mind?
Yeah, that's a really nice question. So, I think if I look at what I've had the longest, so bits of my modular, if I just tilt my screen a bit, maybe you can see it. So I've had the system for 15 years.
It's not quite in focus, Matt, at the moment.
I'll maybe pop a picture of it or something up. But the bits that I've had the longest are the matrix mixers, funnily enough, and so they're like an uncelebrated thing which are useful for almost everything you might want to do. So if I was starting out, I would start with a couple of modules, but one of which would be a matrix mixer. They can mix audio, they can mix control voltages, they can produce control voltages, you can make feedback loops through them. And so I'd maybe start with one filter, one matrix mixer, and explore all the different possibilities, which if the filter has quite a lot of outputs, bandpass outputs or different pole outputs, you could get quite a lot of mileage out of. It's sort of the surge idea of patch programmability. You can program the thing to do the modules to do quite a lot of different things. Once I'd sort of exhausted those possibilities and got really comfortable, I'd then maybe add an oscillator in, and then next take it up to a kind of simple synth voice with an envelope generator. Even if I didn't want to make traditional music, having those extra modules that you can use in different ways. You could make the envelope generator cycle to be an LFO or maybe even an oscillator. You could use it as a wave shaper. If it's based on a slew, it can impart all kinds of changes onto the wave shape as well as its envelope generator role. And once I've got up to kind of 4 modules, I'd probably start then to think of things as kind of distinct voices, and maybe not try and have too many things that overlap. There's so much to explore. It seems a shame not to try out some different possibilities. But yeah, I definitely start small. You can never have enough patch cables. stackable ones or regular patch cables with some mults are cheap. And yeah, lots of feedback patching and lots of kind of exploring modules capabilities beyond what you expected them to be able to do. They typically do more than one thing in a way that maybe they don't in a more fixed semi-modular synth or or a kind of standard desktop synth.
Brilliant. Great. Thank you very much, Matt. I think that yeah, there are no more questions in the room, so I think we'll leave it there. Everybody please give Matt a huge round of applause.
Thanks everyone, and I hope to see you in person sometime soon.
Yes, us too. Hopefully soon. Brilliant.
Thanks very much.
Fab. Thanks, Matt. That was a brilliant talk. So up next, we have Hunaid Nagaira. Hunaid is one of our, every year we run a seed funding program at DM. We see all the time lots of really exciting instruments and projects out there, but sometimes people don't have the resources to get going with them. So we like to put a pot of money aside for people to apply for and give new instruments, new tech, a way to start their lives. So Hunaid was one of our winners last year and has just completed his year working on the project. It's a project started at the Royal College of Art, working on accessible game controllers, and I think wanting to convert that into music controllers. So please welcome Hunaid to the stage.
Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm Hunaid Nagaira. Thanks so much for that introduction, Tim. My pronouns are he, him. I'm a 28-year-old male of Indian descent, and I'm wearing a white T-shirt with blue jeans, and I have short hair, and I wear glasses. So yeah, that's a bit of the formalities. I'm Hunaid, like I mentioned earlier, and what I'm going to be sharing today is a musical instrument or an adaptive musical instrument that I've developed over the period of my work or my time during the Royal College of Art, being a design engineering student there, and then some after during the period of the grant. So a brief introduction of myself is that I'm a technologist, designer, illustrator. These days I associate more with like being a technologist. And I've done a few things here and there, co-founded a climate tech startup, post which I'm now with Nothing Technology. This is kind of a quick snippet of the different kinds of things that I've done in the past. I'm primarily a designer. I'm not a musician by any standards. I think, as you'll be able to tell by my demo later in the presentation. But what you see here is a few different things. There's some speculative interfaces, kind of exploring the future of how people will eat. That project over the top right there with some gray pipes looking thing is a piece of climate technology we developed to counteract stormwater pollution in urban environments, some furniture, some consumer electronics, a bunch of different kinds of things. So I really think of myself as a generalist, and what excites me the most is being able to do different things and contribute to different disciplines in the work that I'm doing. These days, I'm spending a lot of time working with Nothing Technology, who are a consumer electronics manufacturer based in London. I work with them as a technologist, so I help them with prototyping, new ideas, new products, new experiences that we kind of want to build out as a company. So yeah, to start off, I'll quickly take a detour to add some more context as to why I ended up doing the project that I'm going to be sharing here today, which takes me to a project that I've done prior to that, which is jammies. And what jammies were basically musical instruments that were designed for people living with dementia. This was another project that I undertook during my time at the Royal College of Art. What they look like, as you can see, is a tiny 5-button keyboard-ish looking thing, which gives you light feedback every time you press a button. A quick overview, like a very, very quick rundown of what this project was, that and this is more of a TLDR version, but the world's aging, as is documented in a lot of different statistics in a lot of different places. And with that comes dementia, and the prevalence of it has been increasing more and more as we observe. So about 1 in 6 people above the age of 80 experience dementia as a condition, which isn't a natural part of aging and involves some sort of cognitive decline as you keep going through. And the interesting thing is that there's no pharmacological or pharmaceutical interventions to improve quality of life, or any meaningful ones really, up until now, to improve the quality of life for someone living with dementia. But interestingly, music is one of the things that kind of works out to be quite a big contributor to improving quality of life. And that was quite an interesting insight, which led me to this space of music and accessibility needs. So the question I really asked with that project was, how might we design new ways of interfacing with music for people living with dementia in order to improve their quality of life? So this was kind of broadly the question I was posing. And something that we observed there was, if you went in and looked at how people with dementia, or people, even in general, just older adults, how they interface with music today, a lot of it is quite simple in its nature. It's quite percussive, quite binary in how it makes sound. Excuse my vocabulary with music here, but it seemed quite simple, quite infantile in some ways. And a good piece of evidence for that is if you go on Amazon today and you type in musical instruments for people living with dementia, a bunch of toys for kids show up. And I think the point that I'm trying to make with that is, we're trying to retrospect and kind of just juxtapose a different thing that's not actually designed for someone onto them. And we're hoping that they would make some good use of it. But unfortunately, that often does not land as much. And there's lots to be demanded in these instruments. So that kind of led me to build jammies. I won't go into a lot of detail of it, but jammies are a set of musical instruments that were designed to allow people living with dementia to reminisce, improvise, and jam along to music that was of personal value to them. And the interesting thing about the instrument was that it did not assume any prior musical ability or knowledge. The premise of the device actually was that you had a piece of music playing in the background. It expected a software that would parse and assign a few harmonic notes to the instrument, and that would happen in the background. And as you would, as the piece of music would play, you would just kind of jam along to it, and it would all sound good, and you would feel like you were making a meaningful contribution to it. I'm not including a demo today because I think I would run out of time if I did that. But the conclusion of that project, and why I kind of shared that much, was because it kind of landed me somewhere in the middle of that Venn diagram that you're seeing over there, which has technology, accessibility, and recreation. And as a designer and as a student as well, it just seemed like there was something really interesting going on in the middle of these three things. Lots of interesting work going on, a lot of bigger companies, smaller companies, startups, a lot of people, individual actors, kind of trying to make a lot of change in the space. But unfortunately, not a lot was moving, and it just seemed like there was lots to be done in the space. So I've always kind of been interested in that intersection quite a lot. So that now brings me to Midas, which is the piece of work that I'm wanting to share with you all today. What Midas essentially is that it's an adaptive input device for people living with muscle dystrophy or certain ways of muscle weakening conditions. And how it looks, maybe to start with, is that it's a glove-like interface, but it only has gloves on the tip of your fingers, so it's almost like finger socks. And there's cables going towards a watch-like instrument tied around your wrist on your hand. And how it works really is that it turns anything you touch once you're wearing it, no matter what shape, what form it is, into a musical interface or a control interface generally. Maybe this is a good time to quickly demonstrate it so that moving forward we kind of have context of what this instrument actually is. So like I said, I'm not a musician, as you'll be able to tell with the demonstration I'm about to do. But broadly, the point of the demonstration really is to do two things. Yep. The point of the demonstration is really to do two things. One, to demonstrate the principle that it works with, that you can actually turn anything you touch into a control interface. And the second is that you could potentially, if you did know how to make music, potentially make music with it and make it sound good, hopefully, in the process. So the demonstration really is a simple processing sketch that I've written. And you'll hear kind of like a melodic or somewhat melodic kind of a note kind of playing in the background. And as I kind of use the instrument, you'll hear it changing, responding to my actions. I'll kind of explain a bit more about what is going on with the instrument itself in a second, but maybe I'll just kind of do the demonstration first. Yeah, happy to demonstrate it a bit more later if anybody has questions later. Okay. Right. Pretty happy that it didn't break in the middle of the demonstration. But yeah, what you essentially just saw here, what I was trying to do is demonstrate the fact that you didn't actually need a specially designed object. You didn't need a certain kind of surface. It was agnostic of what you were touching, and also agnostic of the shape that you were actually interacting with. So you could use an apple, that's an household object. You could even use a banana. I've had people use it with wooden spoons or nothing at all, just kind of applying 4 seconds to the surface. And so that's kind of the instrument. I'm now going to go into a bit more about how I ended up at this conclusion that this was something that needs to be or is worth building in the first place. But to start off with, within the context of this kind of presentation, the development of the controller actually happened in the context of gaming. I was trying to actually build out a gaming controller. But interestingly, I think as many others have realized that there's a lot of similarities between musical instruments and controllers. or a lot of hardware in general, in a sense where a lot of technological hardware has evolved in response to technological innovation that other actors have been doing, and also in response to cultural expectations of how certain things are supposed to look. So they're not necessarily for everyone, but they're kind of made for an average-looking person and the image of what an average person looks like. And as soon as you start moving away from the expectation of that average person, these objects kind of start breaking, and you can't necessarily use them as best as you would want otherwise. So when I kind of started out this project, this was my thesis at the Royal College of Art. I was really looking at two things. I was trying to find an activity, and I was trying to find a disability or a condition that kind of people struggled with. And for my activity, I looked at gaming. And why I got to that conclusion was because about 20% of all gamers globally, this stat might be a bit out of date now, but at the time it was about 2.7 billion people identified as gamers, and about 20% of them identified as having some sort of disability. So it seemed like quite a massive number. And the biggest barrier for them to be engaged in that activity or engaged in gaming was the affordability and availability of adaptive hardware. And I looked at a lot of different contexts in which people game. I found muscular dystrophy or muscle weakness to be quite interesting. To start off with, obviously a lot of people might know, but muscular dystrophy is a muscle weakening condition in which over a period of time your muscles start weakening, your muscles start atrophying, which means your muscles kind of deform in certain ways because you're not using them as much. And quite a few, about 110,000 people, including children and adults, experience it in the UK itself. But yeah, why muscle dystrophy was particularly interesting to me was, one, that with a muscle weakening condition, mobility limitations kind of make gaming or indoor kind of ways of recreating quite important. And as really important avenues of personal development and just participation in society in general. And the second one was that I actually found people who were willing to collaborate with me and did enjoy gaming and had muscle dystrophy in the first place. So the methodology for the design of this instrument really was this thing that often Google, a team at Google kind of practices, which is called Start With One. And they do it in the context of digital experiments and a lot of these different things. I kind of extrapolated it in a context of designing things, where if you really start with one person and try to solve a problem for a single person, the hypothesis is that a lot of times you might end up solving a problem for a community that might experience the same problem. And eventually you might get to analogous communities who also experience that problem, and eventually you might go to like different activities or things like that. So the bet really was that if one person's going to be facing this problem, the argument was that it's pretty much sure that a lot of other people might experience something similar. But this kind of at the start of it was just really a hypothesis. And with that, I kind of set out to find people. And like I mentioned, I found collaborators, some really interesting, really passionate individuals in the gaming community, in adaptive technology community. But the most important ones were really Vivek and Grant, both of whom happened to be really avid gamers, but are also themselves accessibility journalists. So they had a really interesting perspective on this whole space. And most importantly, they kind of experienced muscular dystrophy themselves. So they kind of seemed like the perfect people to be able to be working with in the development of this. And it's quite important in any kind of design project. We're often taught to set constraints very early on so that you don't end up quite muddled in your output. But the three things that I kind of really learned from Vivek and Grant were that I was really trying to design for people who had fully formed fingers, but they did experience muscle atrophy, which means, like I explained earlier, that their muscles were deformed in certain ways, where they had limited range in movement, but not quite a lot. Their limitations were physical, they weren't cognitive. They had a lot of, they were quite well-functioning people. They had active jobs. They kind of, so yeah, they weren't facing any particularly limiting cognitive conditions. And while they lacked range and strength of physical movement, what they did retain was precision. So they didn't have a lot of range of movement. They didn't have a lot of strength in how much they moved, but they had precision in how they moved their fingers. So these were three really interesting insights into the condition itself. But at the same time, I kind of used those as my constraints around the subject. And two really interesting things that I learned from Vivek and Grant and looking at a few other gamers' setups as to how they were participating in gaming right now was the first that people were obviously modifying their controllers quite a lot. They were hacking them up, they were opening them up, cutting parts, adding parts, kind of gluing stuff to it. Even in terms of electronics, a lot of people were just kind of modifying controllers within their electronics themselves. And they were having to conform their hands around objects that weren't designed for them. While an Xbox controller or a PS5 controller or a lot of these kind of off-the-shelf ones might be quite good for us to use, they often aren't really ergonomic, or they can't kind of accommodate every single person. So with these things kind of laid out, I kind of started experimenting with what ways could someone actually play a game if it wasn't a physical controller. I looked at quite a few things. Could you use facial gestures? Could you use your muscles under your chin? There's now actually technologies quite eerily which can read what you're saying without your mouth actually opening. So that's a whole another tangent. But there's ways that you could actually go about this problem. But the most interesting insight came from actually quite a simple exercise, which was me just kind of modeling a bunch of different shapes of controllers and then showing them to Vivek and Grant over Zoom. And out of this exercise, something really interesting that Grant said is if you were to design an ergonomic controller for muscular dystrophy, you're going to have to make a different one for each person. You're going to have to make a different one so that every single person in their atrophy can kind of suit to that problem. And that eventually led to our kind of solution setting or provocation that if any surface touched could become an input interface, gamers living with MD will be able to use uniquely ergonomic objects as control interfaces, and that would make for a physically more suitable, sustainable, enjoyable experience for them. So that brings us to Midas, which is the output of this kind of piece of research and work. Midas is a wearable adaptive gaming controller that's designed particularly for muscle weakness, and it can turn anything you touch into a controller interface, like I've said 100 times already. But how it's actually working is that you've got this box-like thing here, or like watch-like thing wrapped to your wrist, which houses all the electronics. There's a few wires going to each of your fingers, and on your fingers are sock-like fabric sensors. And what these are actually called are force-sensitive resistors. They kind of sense the amount of force that you're applying against anything. I'm happy to kind of answer more about how I've actually made them or what's the underlying principle of how it works. It essentially is a resistor, which a lot of people might know what is. It kind of stops electricity from going from one place to another. And the physical deformation of these fabric-based resistors kind of changes the resistance of the material itself. So even when you apply very subtle amounts of force, you get a decent amount of resolution, which is why people with very little force in their fingers could also end up using these instruments. This is a bit more about the industrial design of it and why they're socks and not gloves or anything else. A few reasons are because your hands are atrophied. As a result of MD, you can't really put on gloves. It's quite a difficult thing to do. So it's quite a lot easier to have socks that just go into your fingertips, given that that's going to be a control kind of surface. And this is a bit more about the technical development. This is showing a series of prototypes as to how did I reach the conclusion that these sensors should actually be fabric-based and not anything else. You'd see I kind of started off with the off-the-shelf ones that you can get off of Amazon. They're quite tiny, almost just kind of sit towards the front of your finger. And a big problem towards early prototypes, I realized, is that a lot of gamers, as a result of their atrophy, aren't really just using the fingertip. They're using like different parts of their fingers, maybe even the back of their finger, the side of their finger, to apply force. So an ideal solution would really be that no matter where you applied force from or what surface you kind of pressed against, it should kind of get some sort of response to your action, which is kind of how we came to Fabric, and like a softer medium kind of seemed like the one to go with. This is just some more, I kind of found the exercise of playing around with Fabric with e-textiles, kind of just using this medium, quite interesting. So it was quite a big learning curve for myself, learning how to stitch. This is just an overview of all the prototypes I did over the course of that experimentation. Around here, you can see there were a lot of experiments with different patterns of conductive thread as to see if can you design an electrode or a certain kind of pattern that would give you better response or better sensitivity in your sensors themselves. So that's kind of where I reached towards the end of my university. And this was a proof of concept prototype that just kind of visualize the response and the resolution of these things and how much control you really had, even if you weren't moving your fingers as much. And with that, I kind of went into user testing it with a couple people. And initially, I couldn't find someone very close to me with MD, so I used an individual, or kind of worked with an individual who had experienced brain cancer around 2 years prior to testing. And as a result of their cancer, they were kind of all fine up until that point. But a repercussion from their surgery was that they experienced tremors in their left hand. So they didn't have stability in their hand anymore. But I didn't have a lot of choice. I kind of just went ahead testing it anyways. And we did a few things. We kind of visualized the force response. And we played very simple games like Doodle Jump with it. And we realized two problems. One is that when you're holding something in the air, or if you're kind of applying force onto something, no matter how little that is, you end up applying a reactive force from the other end as well. So that's a problem that I wasn't really able to solve. I'm not entirely sure it's solved just yet either. But the other one was that it was quite interesting to see that Midas was useful beyond the constraints that I had kind of designed it in. For instance, the individual with tremors found it really useful because with a regular keyboard, they found it quite difficult to play the game because they had to hit a very precise key at a very precise time. But with Midas, they just kind of had to time it well. And they could hit anywhere on a table or a broad surface, and that kind of let them move the character around to play the game. So this kind of validated my approach from the start, which was this start with one methodology, where I kind of started out designing something for one person, but I kind of found out that it was possibly useful for more communities. So it was useful for people with arthritis, maybe, for people who experience tremors, for people or people who are recovering from strokes might not have a lot of force to kind of visualize how much they were able to apply. And that kind of led me to the kind of insight that this possibly can also be used for music making and other kinds of kind of activities that involve a lot of precision control. If anyone's interested, I think in terms of theory, it's called the curb cut effect. When you make something for someone and then a lot of other people find it useful. I think the etymology of it comes from curb cuts themselves. Like there was a group of activists who kind of advocated for curb cuts, and then everyone now today finds them really useful: bikers, people with trams, trolleys, all of those things. And I'm quite tight on time, so I'm quickly going to run through these. The three key things that are different from anything else that exists in terms of Midas. One, traditional instruments or controllers assume that you're going to have these fingers as your primary fingers, which are your index, middle, and thumb. Especially gaming controllers definitely do assume these. That might not be the case for musical instruments. But for someone with muscle weakness, that might not be the case. They might have a lot of range and precision in their pinky, for instance. The second one is something that I kind of hinted at earlier, that Midas and these kind of moving the sensing surface to your finger and not to have it on an object gives you a bit wider or a bigger kind of target to hit, which makes it more likely that you'll hit it. In UI design or kind of user interface design, that's called Fitts law, if anyone's interested. And a lot of this definitely isn't the first glove to do anything like this. There's 10,000 others that exist. It's maybe the first conceptually in a sense where it's not designed for gestures, but instead it relies on the fact that you are interacting with an object. It assumes and assures that you don't kind of move your hands up in the air. And there's that relationship between an object and a surface and your action. So I think even in terms of cultural expectations around controllers, around musical instruments, obviously there's a world in which you have more gestural ways of doing things. But I kind of found a lot of evidence for the fact that people did want to associate with an object, and that had some sort of sentimental value when you were playing music or something like that. So very quickly, this is kind of the takeaway for me personally out of this whole exercise, that I found that my work as a designer, I find it to be the most gratifying when it's somewhere in the intersection of people with different abilities. I wouldn't even go as kind of myopic to say that it's just disabilities. I kind of want anybody with any kind of abilities or interests and needs and technology and what that kind of brings in terms of a challenge as a designer. I find that really interesting. Obviously, it's always exciting to make something for an average person, something that everyone can use. But I think I find it a bit more rewarding as a designer to kind of add those challenges on these problems. That what if you kind of take away a very primary assumption of how something's supposed to work. And that's it. Sorry, that kind of went on for a lot longer than I expected. I think I have 20 seconds left out of my time. Yeah, I hope that was useful too, and I'm happy to kind of answer questions later as well.
Yes, amazing. Thanks, Hunaid. Super interesting presentation. I think we've probably got time for like one question, if anybody's got one. Squeeze in the rooms. Anybody online? No questions online. Actually, so I do have one question, which is, what's next for this project?
Next for this project is, although I said fabric was probably the best medium to have sensors like these, I'm finding it quite difficult to source this fabric. It turns out it's quite expensive as well. So I'm going to start looking into flex PCBs, which is basically flexible connectors and possibly fabricating electrodes out of just kind of rings that went around your fingers rather than the whole thing. That might be taking a little bit away from what this is, but I think it's a nice trade-off in terms of how cheap those are to manufacture or actually kind of prototype. So that's definitely one, is to kind of build more of these and build better ones of these. But yeah.
Fabulous. Thanks, Hunaid. A round of applause for Hunaid. Brilliant. Such a fascinating tech. I'm going to have more of a go on those myself. So we are just, we're going to take a quick break now, about 15 minutes. Have a go on some of our instruments if you fancy it. There's some snacks and some drinks out in the foyer, and we'll be back in 15 minutes when Paulee will be on stage. So join us back then. I'm working. Yes, I am. Fabulous. Right. Hey everybody, welcome back. I hope you had got some nice snacks and drinks. I am very excited to welcome for the second half Paulee Alex Bow, an autistic musician from Birmingham. In the blurb, music described as crumbling synthwave, industrial and chiptunes, which I'm very excited about. Paulee also took me on the most hardcore nostalgia trip early by playing the early Mario music absolutely perfectly and sent me back to when I was about 9 and spent all my time playing Mario. So I was extremely happy about that. I think I don't have anything more to say. I'm just going to hand over to Paulee. Take it away.
Thank you. Evening all. I've had a cold the last few days, so... Have I got an accompanist? No. Anyway, hi, I'm Paulee. I am... Oh. I'm getting upstaged here. My name's Paulee. My name's Paulee. I'm a musician from Birmingham. I am white. I have blue hair. I'm a non-binary person. And I'm wearing a green plastic dress. And they knew about this when they hired me. So... there we go. I'm going to do a little piece about autism and some of the barriers and difficulties that I've kind of faced in, creating music and actually finding an audience for music. So, without further ado, I'm going to start. So, I was born in 1982 in Birmingham to a very incredibly loving family and also a musical family. My great-grandmother was a silent movie pianist. And childhood was, even though I had autism, great until about the age of 12 when I had to go to secondary school. And that's when everything changed. I just couldn't mirror the other children. And it didn't matter that I'd come from a nice sort of stable family unit. Essentially, going to that school broke me psychologically. And I've been trying to kind of claw my way back ever since. To a world of boxes I can't comprehend. Mama says you can't be left behind. When in Rome, when in playgrounds, doesn't seem to change. I'm still baffled by these human beings.
they follow me and engage. Every time I frail and fail again, I'll be here for many years. Your children will remember me as the boy they crushed and pushed away. The 90s being the 90s, I did have a few distractions, and when I was about 12 or 13, I got myself my first home computer and learnt how to create music like this. I used to be a wonder kid. Whoa, then I was an awkward teen. Then I tried to be a beauty queen. Now I'm getting older. Who am I gonna be? Aging. Gotta find a way to it. Aging. Gotta find a way. Aging. Gotta find a way to it. Who am I gonna be? Motherfucking aging. Hey, whoa, yeah. Hey, whoa, yeah. Hey, whoa, yeah. Aging. Gotta find a way to it. Aging. Gotta find a way. Aging, yeah. Gotta find a way to it. Who am I going to be? Thanks. So, I kept at it, I kept making music. Unfortunately, the demons, they got to me by this point. And I ended up, way before COVID, a few years before, becoming a complete recluse. Not going out, not seeing anyone. Heard a distant clank from down the hall. Another invite piled up in the mail. And I wouldn't want them all to see me small. Oh, I wouldn't want them all to see me fail. And these should be the best years of my life. And these should be the best years of my life. And where are you? How can I get And these should be the best years of my life. These should be the best years of my life. But where are you? Oh, how can I get through? Slamming the door behind me, I'm out of my hand, can't take it, I feel love, but all of the touches and kisses can't get through. 'Cause I've been feeling so alone. I've been feeling pretty low. I've been feeling so alone. I'm living a lie. Don't crawl back into the fireside. The terrible truth. No one in any sort of power with millions cares about our art at all. So many people try so hard and still fail. And if we're gonna save ourselves, we're gonna have to do it ourselves. Ignore me if you want to. I'm just an outsider voice. But lately I've been consumed by people who have worked hard. By people who have worked hard and subsequently failed. What can these fellas tell you? What do the stories say? That gets you the outcome, that gets you the break. It's chaos and stardom that gives you your place. You should be careful. You should be careful, ooh, blaming yourself. You should be careful. You should be careful. Insurmountable odds are against you. No, I'm not saying that these people aren't talented. I'm not saying that they didn't work hard. but they weren't struck down by lightning on the way to the studio or concert hall. Does every glinting idol really deserve their lofty place? Could 10,000 other burning people easily take their space? You should be careful. You should be careful. Fooling yourself. You should be careful. You should be careful. Much maligned, undermined, they placed you in a world unkind. You're divine, tireless eyes, they see them walk the scarlet line. Much maligned, televised, you see them walk. You're above line. We get stunned, stunned, out of control. We get stunned, stunned, out of control. We get stunned, stunned, out of control. We get stunned, stunned. We're not born in the same place. We're not born with the same face. So why do you put it all on how hard you worked? 'Cause I was born crippled in many enduring ways, and still you insist about how hard you worked. Broken by 18, I'm still in therapy. I learned some fucking skills. So, it gets happier in a minute. It does get happier. A kind of bitterness kind of pervaded my life. A feeling of, why do all these people have so much when here I am working my ass off and not getting anywhere whatsoever. They came, all the chances they'd received weighed heavy, a jolt of spun black matter churns my wings withheld. And they came, I'd realized they'd never change. Insidious subjection, oh Alita, I call on you to make some waves. Voices trail on so long, little space for new song. Don't even care if I'm wrong. Lita. I've seen people revel in another person's win, eating away at me like cancerous perfection. Focus still refraction. And put our plan in action. Today is the day. Today is the day. We put our plan in action. A leader. The Terrible Truth Part 2. We are living in a post-art world. Unless you can dress your art up in some kind of gimmick for likes or views, then it's not going to get anywhere. And that's why I went back to the first computer I ever loved and started making music with it again. And I found a passionate audience out of the blue that I wouldn't have got just doing things ordinarily. This is the winner of the Amiga Art Competition. It's my cover of Wicked Game by Chris Isaac. And this led to so many things: podcasts, interviews, free stuff sent to me. And I don't know, it should have just been easier, surely. World was on fire, no one could save me but you. Strange what desire makes foolish people do. I never dreamed that I'd need somebody like you. I never dreamed that I need somebody. 'Cause I don't wanna fall in love. And I don't wanna fall in love with you. With you, whoa, with you. What a wicked game to play, to make me feel this way. What a wicked thing to do, to make me dream of you. And I don't wanna fall in love. I don't wanna fall in love with you. Nobody loves no one. Oh, and I've got some CDs if anyone wants to buy one. So, closing statements, really. I don't actually think a life in music is very accessible at all. Most non-disabled people can't access a life in music, making money off music, or being able to have an audience for their creative outlet. I see loads of forums and threads online of people who work and just can't crack it. So if non-disabled people can't crack this, can't find a way in to this closed off elitist group, then how are disabled people going to? How are autistic people going to, when only 20% of us even have jobs? I don't have the answers for all these questions, but I know that my next move is going to be to try and launch an autistic record label called Aut Records. So please look out for that in future. And yeah, we'll see where this journey goes. Thank you. I hope my sharp, angry, disabled venom has not been unpalatable. But I was just telling things how they were, essentially. Thanks, and I will see you some other time. Cheers.
Amazing. Thanks, Paulee. Awesome. One more round of applause for Paulee. Come on. That was absolutely amazing. Fabulous. Great. So, I don't know if does anybody have any questions for Paulee?
Yes, if you want to ask me questions.
Hold on, Mike, hold on. Because otherwise people online can't hear you.
I know. Hello.
Hello.
That was great.
Thank you.
I just wondered when we can find out about your record label.
Essentially, I write and YouTube for a website called Sonic State.
Okay.
And we have a lot of news and stuff like that, so I assume that I'll put a big article up there.
Okay, great.
Because they basically they don't really police what I write, which is probably foolish of them. But I'll write an article about it, basically. And it's going to take some time to get off the ground because I've got a full-time job and 2 kids and the journalism job. So we'll see. We'll see when it happens, but it's going to happen.
So Sonic State.
Sonic State.
Okay.
Also, we do a weekly podcast, so you can see me on there gassing about various musical things.
Fabulous. I think we've got one more question at the front. Hold on. There you go.
Hi.
Hey,
so I work with a lot of autistic young people and their carers
Yes.
in Northeast London. So
Cool.
is there any chance if they constantly look for activities and workshops for their
Yes.
children? So is there any way they can get in touch with you, or you do any workshops for young people?
I haven't, but I could. I have done loads and loads of workshops for adults, older adults, and I don't think it would be that much different, basically. But yeah, you can do things like songwriting or drumming circles or making, little beats or things like that. So yeah, that's fine. I'll give you my details at the end, and then.
Thank you.
Yeah, that would be cool.
Brilliant. Thanks very much.
Autistic children love music often. My 2-year-old is 3 now. He's autistic as well, and he's a drummer already. So there we go.
Fabulous. Well, I think we've got time for one last question. Let me just bring the mic over here.
Hi, that was fantastic.
Thank you.
Musician myself, so I appreciate some of the sounds that you were making. I'm going to question about some of those.
Sure.
My name is Dujan. I am sort of a campaigner for more accessibility for musicians, artists with disabilities.
Great.
I'm about to do an interview with the BBC,
Yes.
And mainly because they've chased me for a little while because I.
Well, they're chasing you. That's
well,
a good gig.
So I think just to embarrass me, that's all. But, but at the same time, I don't feel that I've enough experience to speak on what I'm going to be Bob Geldofing them about, which is more accessibility for musicians and artists with disabilities.
Yes.
I'm just going to ask you if there's one question that you could put to the world, really.
Yeah.
What would it be, music-wise?
Music-wise. Why do live performance experiences have to be the way they are? I mean, we've had a nice time here tonight, haven't we, in a relatively chill space. Why is that so rare? And I've been working with a company to do, it's not Drake Music, that's you. It was something called Unmute, a company called Unmute. Look them up as well, because they want to make things like, you know, when you're an artist, you get a rider. I mean, I didn't tonight because these guys are cheapskates. I'm joking. It's a joke, right? But if you can get a rider that an artist asks for, why can't you get some kind of disability, reasonable adjustments? You know? Why can't you do that? Why can't it be the normal thing to go, you know, this artist is coming on, they don't like this, they really hate this, can we just not do that bit? But essentially, music is weaponized by people because they tell you, this is your dream, you should be enjoying this, you should work for little, you should be treated like crap, but you're still getting to do something that no one else can do. So just put up with it. That seems to be the music industry, basically. And I think it might change. I hope it will change. But there we go. Yeah. Well, that's cool. But yeah, no worries. I got an extra soapbox out of that question. It was great.
Fabulous. Fabulous. Thanks so much, Paulee.
No worries.
Absolutely awesome. One more round of applause, please, for Paulee.
Thanks.
Great. Fabulous. So we're gonna wrap things up now. Just a few things to say at the end. First of all, huge thanks to the City Bridge Foundation and to the Arts Council who fund this project. Obviously, without them, without their funding, none of this could happen. Absolutely vital. Lorna and Petra, indefatigable BSL interpreters. We throw all sorts of tech nonsense at them and they handle it with their style and panache every time, so thanks so much to them. Similarly, Max, our captioner over there, absolutely brilliant job, and Oscar, our audio engineer off at the back. There he is, absolutely fabulous. And of course, huge thanks to the DM team who make all this happen. Wrestle the tech, make it all go smoothly. Gio, Deborah, Rob, and Hugh. Can we give them all a big round of applause for making all of this happen? Fabulous. We have recently got some funding to take DMLab national, which is very exciting. So there are in the upcoming months going to be lots more DMLabs in lots more places. So Colchester and Bristol and Gloucester and Hull, and then Manchester and London, and hopefully more as time goes by. So that's super exciting. Woo! So yes, very exciting. So keep your eyes open for those, and by all means, tell your friends who live in those places to go, or go to them yourselves. That would be absolutely marvellous. The next one of these is on November the 3rd here, and it escapes me whether it has a theme. What's the theme? No, we haven't got a theme. So November the 3rd is the next one here. So do come along to that. One thing. Our friend over here, I'm sorry, I forget your. Oksana is doing some research at UCL on disabled creatives in East London. So please do, there's flyers over there, so if you're interested in that, please do grab one and take part. If you're online, there's the QR code. I don't know if you actually get that, but we'll see. And finally, last but definitely not least, I hope it's going to go off on screen now. This here is our evaluation survey. If nobody fills this in, we never get any funding ever again and nothing ever happens. It's up to you. If you want this stuff to continue, please, please, please fill this thing in. Give us your feedback. We put it in our funding bids. If you write nice things about how important DMLab is, it goes straight in our funding bids and they pay for more. So please fill it out. Don't miss the opportunity to support us and make this stuff happen. Keep on going. It's really important that it does. So please do that. Yeah, as always, if you've got any stuff that you want to present, you've got cool instruments or anything, please just get in touch. We're always open to, and always looking for new people to present. I'll sign off there. Thanks very much. Oh, yes, we absolutely can. So we also have, very excitingly, our artist showcase, which has how many artists? 5 of our emergent artists who we support with career development support are going to be performing. It's here. It's on the 10th of October. Tickets are free. And yeah, it's going to be an awesome night. It really is. It's going to be a night of music and all sorts of cool stuff. So please do come, celebrate music making with us, and have a great time. Fabulous. All right, we'll see you next time.